From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today?
I'm doing well. And yourself, Steve?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to our conversation. As we had teased in our recent episodes, we were excited to invite a guest on our show, and we have one today, one who happens to listen, and we've gotten to know through online, and I also got to meet through A State of Control, the podcast I do on AV Nation. And without further ado, I'll introduce Kate Adkins. She's the User Experience Engineering Manager at Root Systems. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. James and I really started this podcast because we were trying to just make conversation, bring to light more of the ideas and the topics that programmers talk about, and answer some of the common questions, both for people who are doing programming and who want to learn more about it, because there's also a need to educate people on the outside. I know that you've given us some feedback throughout this process, and we appreciate you listening. So maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit about your background and also what has brought you to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, well, I've been programming in one form or another in AV for about 10 years now. So it's been a while. Not all of that was full-time. It's been in the last 4 or 5 years. It's been kind of full-time programming, but prior to that was kind of like updating systems and stuff like that. So I've always just been really eager. Ever since I got my first taste of AV programming about a decade ago, I just fell in love with it. So anytime I can find anybody talking about it and any information about it, I always want to jump in it. And I love listening to anything about it because it just gets that inspiration, right? Like you hear different perspectives and, oh, this person did something really cool. They had a really awesome idea. I want to give that a try. Like that just sounds so awesome. And I want to have fun with it. So yeah, like I said, I've been programming for quite a while now. I'm kind of like the head of the programming department. We call it User Experience Engineering. Because we're like focusing on that user experience, but it comes down to it's the programming department here at Root. So yeah, like I said, I love getting those different types of inspiration, and that's what I find so valuable in podcasts like that. And there's just those different perspectives.
We refer a lot of times to programmers, a lot of kind of feel like they're on an island a little bit, they they don't really always have an outlet to bounce ideas off of, like you had mentioned, or they aren't exposed to different ways of doing things or different thoughts. Plus, also personally, I believe that we need to create a greater voice for programmers in the industry. James, I'll let you kind of jump in on this too. When we've been talking, in the past, and trying to get more people involved in getting, bringing together this community. What are some things that we can talk to with Kate and others that are in her position with regard to how we can be more effective in doing this?
That's a good question there, Steve. I really don't know how, pardon me, sorry, how we can be more effective besides bringing people like Kate on who can talk to our listeners. Because right now it's, you and I are talking most of the time to our listeners, but it's great to hear other members of the community, other programmers, other opinions. So I think that's a good avenue to try to get our voices out there. Like you said, Steve, like people, we need to know what we do and the value we bring. And like having people like Kate is a awesome way to do that.
I am. One of the things that I think connect all three of us is AV in the AM and being online. And I know, Kate, one of the things that you have, it's actually very inspiring, and that we've talked about is wanting to put yourself out there more. So what does that feel like? And Well, has it been what you expected?
Yeah, honestly, it's terrifying. I mean, I have that stereotypical programmer personality, right? Where like I'm more comfortable talking to my computer than like other human beings most of the time. So yeah, it's terrifying, but it's also really exciting at the same time. And like you said, it's like that continuation of like getting different conversations going, um, finding those new perspectives, and building that community. I think like as programmers we do have that like reputation of being like the lonely person hiding in their little dark hole, and they pop out every once in a while to do things right. Maybe not necessarily part of a team, but I feel like that's not necessarily true. Like a lot of us really do getting together and talking about nerdy stuff. And I'm part of a Discord group of a bunch of guys that I work with, and we just on the evenings and the weekends we find something like really nerdy and fun. We pass it around, and I think it's really important to give ourselves that kind of sense of community when our jobs don't typically maybe offer that all the time, because programming can be kind of a lonely sport sometimes. Especially with the environments that we tend to work with. Like they're not necessarily geared towards that group, um, you know, building programs is, it's harder to do in some of the environments we work with. So yeah, just like finding community, either through podcasts like this, through Twitter, um, like the three of us do, talking to AV people all the time. It's just, it widens your horizons, I think is the most important thing too.
Yeah, I
So,
like. Go
oh,
ahead,
so I
please.
was going to say, as Steve mentioned, getting yourself out there, I'm the same way. Getting the voices out there is very hard. It's scary. So what made you go to Twitter and other platforms to get your voice out there?
I think it was mostly 10 years of listening to people on podcasts talking about getting out there. That was part of it. But no, it was just, I felt like I got to a point in my own life and my own career where I just really wanted that connection with the rest of the industry, and with people doing the same sort of things that I'm doing in other places. I felt like I wasn't really getting that much access where I'm at. Because like I said, I love my job. I love where I work. But it does tend to be that kind of locked in, thing. Like you're not, as an integrator, you're typically not, maybe working with a bunch of other programmers in other places. So you don't get that kind of natural community. You have to kind of build it for yourself. And I found that was just something I really wanted. And I was at that point where I really wanted to do that. And the only way I was going to be able to do that was to put myself out there, to put my ideas out there, and see what came back. And it's been really great so far. So I would definitely recommend trying it.
So everybody listen to that. That's very important.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it, and we continue to talk about it. And one thing that I found, just to add to the conversation, is that although we all probably consider ourselves an introvert and prefer to not be the center of attention or in the spotlight or be the one that's broadcasting messages, we do interact very well one-on-one and in small groups, just as you mentioned, Kate. And I think that that's something to consider, because it's not that we don't like people, we just don't feel as comfortable as other people do in big groups.
Yep,
And I've
totally.
learned that about myself too. James and I talk a lot about Infocom too. Have you, is that something that you have either gone to or you feel like would be important for you to attend in the future?
I have not been able to go up to this point. I haven't had the privilege to be able to do that. But it's definitely one of the things that I've always wanted to do. I did get to go to NAB about 10 years ago, which was pretty awesome. But that was kind of my last trade show really that I got to go to. So I'm hoping that maybe I get to go next year if I can make it. Would be really awesome to get to meet a lot of these people in person.
And I think we're getting to a point where it's coming back to what it was pre-pandemic. So I think you'll get a lot out of it. And James, I don't know if you want to share, since for you, I think it was fairly magical, and you even went in the year that was the probably oddest year that there was. But you and I got to meet in person, and we spent a lot of great time together. And it's probably the seed for doing this podcast, quite honestly.
I agree. Yeah, that's the October one, which I know Vixen will not change, but I still say October is the best time for InfoComm. Us in higher ed always loves that. But yeah, it was a good time. I got to meet Steve in person. I mean, it was funny enough that we're both are from New Jersey, but we had to go down to Florida to meet in person. Just like this year, I lived 45 minutes from Chris Neto, and I had to move to Vegas, and he had to fly out for InfoComm for us to meet in person. So that's really what's valuable of trade shows, is getting out there and meeting people face to face and networking. I know I took a lot of connections from even the last InfoComm. One of our listeners, Richard, from BIAMP, I reached out to him a couple of times when I ran into some issues professionally, and it's nice knowing that, hey, we have those people we can fall back on. And same with other people out there like Tim Albright, Joe Siaway, and I mean, we always mention Chris Neto, and already did mention him. So those are always great people to have, to be able to reach out and say, hey, we need this, or I need this, and they can point you in the right direction. They may not be the one who can help you that moment, but they can point you in the right direction.
I one thing that I got, and I've been going to InfoComm for many years, probably too many to count. And it's and what really hooked me was going there and realizing what contribution you make to the overall industry, and how many people know who you are and can value what you do. And it's, to me, that was really when the light bulb went off for me, because you tend to be in your own environment a lot, and you don't see what you do, how that fits into this big industry that we're a part of, and with so many different components. And I thought that was pretty neat. I guess, taking that a little further, Kate, how do you think, or do you have any ideas or tips for people who want to get more involved, and like, I think we have a long way to go to build a greater voice for programmers in the industry. I didn't know if you had any thoughts or insight that you wanted to share.
Well, I mean, I could share the way I've kind of done it for myself. So if others out there have that same kind of introverted personality and you're afraid to put yourself out there, maybe these are some tips for you. I kind of started small. So AV in the AM is great. And, I'm sure you guys talk about it all the time on this podcast. If anybody out there that's listening hasn't checked it out yet, it's honestly the only reason I have Twitter. It's pretty much for AV in the AM, and for the other AV tweets that are on there. But start small, find those kind of forums that you can start following along, and then make a comment here or there. Find a topic that you feel comfortable in your position, and just make a comment, and then see what happens. If somebody responds, you can start a conversation. And then if there's, something that you feel a little bit more passionate about, put that out there and then see what comes back. And then just let the conversation kind of go from there. You don't necessarily have to start full out and post a whole bunch of stuff and expect people to just love everything or whatever. It's just find those small steps to take and build from there. I mean, if that means starting in one of the programmer forums first until you start to feel comfortable with your position, I mean, we're all in the same boat. We all understand each other. We all speak each other's languages. So that might be a good place to start too. There's plenty of them out there. There's different Discord groups and in communities and all sorts of stuff like that. Just start putting your ideas out and let them grow.
Yeah,
Great
I
advice.
found that a lot of people like to help, and if you help other people, you'll quickly make a lot of friends.
Yep, that too. It's a good way to get a lot of people talking to you is to post a question in one of the programming groups. Yep.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
James, and anything from your perspective with regard to, I guess, being that you have gotten, you're maybe a step further, ahead of Kate. Anything that you can add that might help her along the way?
I think what Kate mentioned was probably dead on, hammer hitting the nail in the head is, I mean, that's how I started. And I know a lot of people out there know of me, but I was just like everyone else. I was afraid to put my voice out there. And I did what Kate said. I commented on something I felt strongly about, that I knew about. And that one comment led to being on a podcast, led to being more active, to now, being board member of HEPMA and on Ask the Programmer, and just really out there more just from that small comment I made. And like we said, we talk about AV and AM a lot, but I don't always comment, but I do read all the time. I'm always reading the comments on there, but some of the topics I'll admit I have no knowledge about, or I have nothing valuable to add, but I'm learning from what other people are saying. And then I might have a tidbit to add here and there. Or I might, one of the comments might pique my interest. I'd be like, oh, can you tell me more about this? And then that opens up a whole nother conversation. So don't feel you have to go look at all 5 questions and go, oh, I need to answer all these. I don't want to do this. Pick one question, pick one comment. That's all you really have to do, is start out and then build from there.
And I think, on a tangent a little bit to that, those questions where you don't feel like you have anything to contribute, definitely read the comments that are on there. You'll find so many different perspectives, because there's, and I know we're talking about AB and the AM, but like there's people from like all different parts of the industry on there, and I learn so much like every week. People talking about different verticals that they're in, or if they're in broadcast, or if they're in network security, maybe they're in sales, maybe they're a manager or something, and just finding those different perspectives that you're not getting in your own world. It's such a learning opportunity, and it's definitely those opportunities for those conversations to really kick off, where maybe somebody says something and you go, well, actually, this is what it's like from my side, and you make that comment, and then that conversation just flows pretty naturally at that point.
Great advice.
I think as we wrap up, one thing I was going to add, and it'll probably play very well into the way we close every episode, is reach out and make a connection to people. So, follow them, connect to them on LinkedIn, tell them that you liked something that they did. It goes a long way. And I listen to people on podcasts all the time, and then I'll send them a note, because they're asking, here's how to connect with me. So I connect with them. And then and I think I've never had somebody who has not been happy about that. So it's always good to make somebody feel good, especially if you were enjoyed something that they said. So and with that said, as we typically wrap up, and we will have Kate back for another episode, but Kate, how can people get in touch with you and connect with you, follow the things that you do, and learn more about your role at Root?
Yeah. Well, you can email me. I'm at kate@rootintegration.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm not I don't post all that much there right now, but I am definitely on it all the time. And also, obviously, Twitter, AV in the AM. My handle is code_Kate. So you'll definitely find me there pretty much every Sunday morning.
And make sure that you follow her. James, how can people get in touch with you and learn more about what you're up to?
Well, as always, you Google me, you'll find me. Sunday morning with Steve and Kate on AV and the AM on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't use it as much, but I am on there. Writer for the Higher Ed Digital Magazine, the IT and AV column, board member for HEPMA. Again, I'm out there. You'll find me.
So as we've been touting, Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. Eastern, there is, if you're not familiar, follow the hashtag AV in the AM. And if you need some help with that, please reach out to any of us and we'll help you. But it's kind of like reading the Sunday morning newspaper of AV, in my opinion, and it's great way to connect with people and get your Sunday off to a good start. For me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on most social platforms. You can read the things that I write on AV Network and Commercial Integrator, as well as my company website at controlconcepts.net. But please continue to listen and share feedback and let us know what you like to hear on this podcast. We could be found on YouTube and on Apple and Google podcasts. And we just want to continue to connect with more of our listeners and have more people on, like we have had Kate on this show. And we want to continue to grow this community and get more people listening and sharing ideas. So I think this was a good episode that really speaks to that. And we want to continue with this trend. That's all we have for today. And this has been Ask the Programmer.